Every day, Chicago pumps enough water to fill nearly 1,100 Olympic swimming pools. And that's before a single drop goes down a drain. All that water has to go somewhere, and what comes back out the other end is even bigger. The Metropolitan Water Reclamation District treats about 1.2 billion gallons of wastewater a day. That's enough to fill Soldier Field's entire bowl several times over before lunch. Now picture all the people actually making that water dirty in the first place, moving around this city every single day. The CTA carries about 740,000 rides on an average weekday. That's like the entire population of Milwaukee climbing aboard a bus or train. Just once, every day. And a lot of those people are headed somewhere much higher up. Up above the city, O'Hare never really goes quiet. O'Hare handles about 2,400 takeoffs and landings a day. That works out to a plane lifting off or touching down every 36 seconds, round the clock, all day and all night. Across town, its smaller sibling is putting in work too. Midway isn't sleeping either. Midway logs around 650 flight operations a day, roughly 27 planes an hour, a steady drumbeat of takeoffs from an airport wedged right into a neighborhood. All those flights, all those trips, somebody's got to keep the lights on for it. Powering a city this size takes a staggering amount of electricity every single day. Chicago burns through about 80 gigawatt hours of electricity daily, enough to power roughly 2.7 million homes for a full day, which is basically every home in the city, running at once. But keeping the lights on is only half the story. The other half is keeping the city fed, and Chicago does that in a big way. Let's talk about pizza. Chicagoans go through about 150,000 deep dish and tavern-style pizzas every single day, laid edge to edge. That's enough pizza to circle Millennium Park several times over. And pizza's not even the top seller. Hot dogs blow right past it. The city sells around 250,000 hot dogs a day. That's roughly one hot dog for every 11 people in Chicago, every single day, like clockwork. All that food, all that power, all those flights. It adds up to something bigger than any single number can hold, which is exactly where things get really interesting. Let's talk about the money this city actually makes while it's busy eating hot dogs and pumping water. Chicago itself, just the city proper, generates about $650 million of economic output every single day. That's like 3 brand new skyscrapers rising out of the ground, cost and all, before the sun sets. But zoom out to the whole metro area, the suburbs, the exurbs, everything plugged into this economic engine, and the number gets almost silly. The Chicago metro area churns out about $2.1 billion a day, more than the entire daily GDP of some actual countries, generated before most people finish their morning commute. And speaking of things piling up fast, all that economic activity leaves a mess behind, literally. Every day, sanitation crews haul away about 2,800 tons of solid waste from across the city, which works out to something like 460 full-grown African elephants worth of garbage, gone, every single day. Somewhere underneath all that hustle sits the actual city itself, a grid of neighborhoods stretching along Lake Michigan, and everything we're counting today is happening inside those boundaries right now, while we talk. Take Chicago public schools, for instance. On any given school day, about 320,000 students walk through CPS doors, which is more people than live in the entire city of Pittsburgh, all showing up for first period at roughly the same time. Keeping a city that size running doesn't happen quietly either. Somewhere across Chicago, a phone is ringing at 911 right now. The city's emergency dispatch center fields about 8,500 calls a day. That's roughly 6 calls every single minute, day and night. Someone somewhere needing help. And when help needs to actually roll out the door, the Chicago Fire Department is right there with it. Crews respond to emergencies about 1,000 times a day, which means somewhere in the city, a fire truck is pulling out of a station roughly every 90 seconds. All that adrenaline needs fuel, and this city runs on caffeine harder than you'd think. Chicagoans knock back something like 2.5 million cups of coffee every day, enough coffee to fill an Olympic swimming pool not once, but twice over. And while all those cups are getting refilled, trucks and vans are quietly taking over the streets outside. Somewhere around 500,000 packages get delivered across Chicago every single day, which is basically one box landing on a doorstep for every 5 or 6 people in the entire city. All those boxes eventually turn into something else, the bins and bundles waiting at the curb for pickup day. Chicago's Blue Cart program hauls away about 330 tons of recycling every single day. That's roughly 55 fully loaded garbage trucks worth of cans, bottles, and cardboard rolling out of the city before most people have finished breakfast. Underneath all that curbside hustle, there's an invisible river running through the pipes beneath every home and stove. People's Gas pushes about 300 million cubic feet of natural gas through the city each day, enough to fill something like 335 Goodyear blimps floating stacked over the skyline. Getting all that energy to homes is one thing. Getting the people themselves into the city is a whole different machine. Every weekday morning, roughly 230,000 commuters climb aboard Metra trains rolling in from the suburbs. That's close to the entire population of Rockford, Illinois, deciding to ride into Chicago together on a single day. Not everyone's on rails, though. Plenty of people are pedaling. During peak season, divvy bikes get checked out and ridden about 20,000 times a day across the city. Line up all those bike trips end to end, and you'd stretch a chain of bicycles more than 30 miles long out past the suburbs and back. After a day of commuting, plenty of that city unwinds with a drink, and Chicago does not go easy. On an average day, the city gets through roughly 220,000 gallons of beer, which works out to about 27 tanker trucks of beer rolling through bars and liquor stores daily. Of course, more people moving means more chances for things to go wrong out on the roads. Chicago logs about 180 traffic crashes every single day. That's a fender bender, or worse, happening somewhere in the city roughly every 8 minutes day and night. And while all that's happening on the streets, inside CPS cafeterias, a much gentler number is unfolding. Chicago public schools serve about 300,000 meals a day to students, enough food to fill Wrigley Field more than 7 times over with kids eating lunch. That gentler number reminds us this city isn't just moving and eating and building, it's living in the most literal sense. Every single day, new Chicagoans are showing up to join the party. On average, about 95 babies are born in Chicago hospitals each day. That's roughly 4 school buses packed with brand new humans before the sun sets on a single day. Of course, life in a big city runs in both directions, and the numbers don't shy away from that either. On the other end of that ledger, Chicago sees around 75 deaths citywide per day, about 3 classrooms worth of people. A quiet reminder of just how much churn a population of 2.7 million actually has under the surface. Speaking of things happening under the surface, or in this case, tucked under a windshield wiper, there's a number every Chicago driver dreads. The city issues around 8,000 parking tickets every single day, enough paper to plaster several city blocks if you laid them all out end to end. And if tickets are papering the streets, something invisible is absolutely flooding the airwaves above them. Every phone in every pocket, purse, and cup holder across the city is chewing through data non-stop, and it adds up to something enormous. Chicago's cell networks push through roughly 6 petabytes of data every day. That's the equivalent of 1.3 million HD movies streaming at once. An invisible river of information pouring through the air over the loop. All that scrolling works up an appetite. And this is a city that does not mess around when it comes to feeding itself. Across every neighborhood, diner, and deep dish joint, Chicago restaurants serve about 3 million meals a day. Enough to sit down and feed literally every single resident of the city, all 2.7 million of them, in one sitting with plenty of tables to spare. Burn those calories off, and there's one place a huge chunk of the city heads to do it. Along the shoreline, when summer hits its stride, the Lakefront Trail turns into a river of its own. About 30,000 people use it on a single peak day, roughly the same size as the entire field of runners in the Chicago Marathon. Except this crowd shows up to do it again tomorrow. And underneath all of that living, eating, running, and scrolling, the city itself keeps quietly growing, brick by brick, permit by permit. Chicago's Department of Buildings signs off on about 40 new building permits every single day, which works out to a brand new project, getting the green light roughly every 36 minutes of the business day, all day, every day. And that's Chicago, a city that pumps, flies, eats, births, builds, and buzzes through more in 24 hours than most places manage in a year. If your brain is even half as full as this city's data pipes, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell, because next time we're cracking open another city's daily numbers to see just how much it really gets done in one single day.